with all those passes I was trying to organize for all my friends.
All you sports people think sports, the world starts and ends with sports.
An academic to a parent, I will say you're very, very old-fashioned.
I think we all agree that play is an integral part of growing up through joy for children. And we have eminent stakeholders from schools in Bangalore and beyond in the room today. Like they say, what changes the universe is not the richest people, nor the entrepreneurs, nor the scientists. It is educators who change the world, right? Because that is where the seeds are sown. And for the next 15, 16 years that a child is in the school, it is you who shape them for future. And people sitting in the room are responsible for changing that world. Thank you so much for being here. Now that we all are unanimous on play, can we talk about how? So we have an eminent panel today amongst us to spend the next half hour with Rahul, of course, on stage here. I will introduce, I need a little note for this. Before that, my glasses. We got Saumil here, Saumil Majumdar, who will be moderating the panel. Saumil is a dear friend and is somebody who made play his way of life for over 20 years now. Many of you in the room would know Saumil. We in a way operate in the same space. And Saumil is a co-founder, CEO and MD of Sportz, as many of you would know, which is India's first and largest school sports enterprise. Saumil is also the founder director of Sports Village. Saumil has been an entrepreneur since 1998. In fact, Ravi and Saumil go back to IIM Bangalore in their days. So every time we meet him, the first 5 minutes goes back to IIM Bangalore and then come to the topic. In his role as CEO of Sportz, he has been working with schools, federations, policymakers and sponsors towards creating more quality opportunities for children to experience the magic of sport. So Saumil, your mission statement is to make how many million kids play?
Saumil, 100 million.
100 million kids to play. Wonderful. And that's in his signature in every email that he sends. I'm privileged indeed, so thank you Saumil for joining us. I'm privileged to introduce an eminent personality, Ms. Shukla Bose. I had the privilege of meeting Ms. Shukla Bose at Parikrma Humanity Foundation, at which she is the founder and CEO. Parikrma Humanity Foundation is a non-profit organization that runs English medium schools for underprivileged children in Bangalore, popularly known as Shukla Akka. It was so endearing to see when I visited your foundation, everybody calling you Shukla Akka. It only shows the bond that you build with your children.
That's my way of saying young.
Wonderful. That too, for sure. So she is bridging the growing gap in urban India between those who benefit from the economic liberalization and those who don't, through Parikrma Foundation, which is a non-government organization founded way back in 2003, which is over 20 years now. Congratulations. Her professional work spans over 26 years in the hospitality sector and about 20 years in social reform, education advocacy, and the social sector. We're privileged to have you amongst us, ma'am, today. Thank you so much. I will hand this now over to Saumil, and he's in control for the next 30 minutes as a parent.
Okay, thank you, Rohan. Thank you, Ravi, for having me. First of all, glad to be here on this distinguished panel. Thank you, everybody, for being here. A lot of the people here are school leaders, educators who are trying to get kids to play. But as I spent 21 years trying to do the same thing now, one of the things that we realize is that in this whole equation, there's one key character who's not in this room actually. It's not the child, it's the parent. Right? All of us are sold to the idea of play. they are all convinced about the power of play. In fact, they can give lectures for an hour to you about the power of play. But it's still not happening as much. And when you speak to them, very often the question comes, all this is great, but you know what? My parents have a different view. My parent community don't fully agree. My parent community don't fully support either funds or time or flexibility and so on. So I thought the way we could do it is, while we spoke about why of play, I'm going to play the role on your behalf. So please help me with questions that your parents have asked you. I have a few, but you have more, I will reach out to you. As a cynical parent who thinks this whole sports thing is all bunkum. All you sports people think sports, the world starts and ends with sports. But there's a world outside sports. And as a parent and who is responsible for my child, I have a lot of respect for you, Rahul, as a parent. I have clapped very hard for you in my TV room, in my room when you won matches for India. I love all you do. You made India win. But you know what the problem now as a parent is, that you are starting to tell school leaders that children should play. You are starting to write forward a book called Get Kids to Play. You are supporting shoe companies which are all about play. You stay at the elite level. When you come here, you're coming into my house, and I'm having problems as a parent. I have 4 problems that I want to ask both of you to answer. The first problem is, I send my child to school for academics, for an education. You also spoke about how you found a way to balance education. But you know, all these school leaders listen to you, give these fantastic lectures, and then they start introducing a lot of sports in the academics itself, in the curriculum itself. Now, as a parent, there might be a few parents who are convinced, but as a parent, I send my child to school for academics. My worry is, what if my child doesn't do well in academics? He will never be Rahul Dravid. So I am very worried, and I don't get a chance to say it because you come and inspire them to do sports. And as a parent, I am struggling because I don't get to get an option at all. So I'm going to ask you, answer my concern. I am very worried that my child will fall back in his life or her life if I support the sports inside the school.
Oof, that's a good question. Look, I'll try and answer it in the best way I can. But I'm not an expert on this. You guys like you and Bose here have done a lot more work on the ground. Obviously, there are school leaders here who obviously understand the topic a lot better than I do. And a lot of what I said actually is not, honestly, was not about, does not really cater to trying to get schools or to produce elite athletes.
Okay.
Maybe while talking about it, maybe because I speak about it, people immediately put the correlation that, we have to have a school team because we want to produce a Sachin Tendulkar or Rahul Dravid or a KL Rahul or something. And that's actually not the idea. I don't think that is the message I'm trying to convey. Because I'm the first one to understand that it's a 0.00% people who actually go on to play a professional sport. And that's not really where the real value of a sport and getting people to play sport is. The value is in getting, for parents, like if I was to convince you as a parent, I would try and do it in a couple of ways, right? And the first way I would say is that, getting your kids to play at a young age, firstly, has to be better for your health. I think for their health, I think scientifically we can prove well enough that there is no doubt that playing sport is good for your body and your bones and cardiovascular. And as you grow up in life, the initial years, the formative years of what you have done in sport is surely going to be beneficial for your health. So from a purely selfish perspective, if you are a parent and you want your children, and all of us want our children to be healthy, so I think using sport is a definite way of ensuring that your kids are going to be healthy, right?
Okay,
that would be one argument I would say. I would say, okay, and then the other thing I would say is that when you talk about academics, there is no way that your son or daughter can be studying all the time, right? I think even to be excelling in studies, you need to be able to clear your mind up and do other things. And if you're going to just study all the time, you're not going to be able to study at some point of time, right? Your mind is going to get frayed. And kids, like we said, have a lot of choices today, right? So your son or daughter, instead of playing a sport or when the school is giving them an opportunity to spend an hour after school, actually not to become a great athlete, but to be able to just play with their friends and learn a little bit of skill, run around, get physically fitter, get a little bit more, build some camaraderie, build some friendships. The school is giving you an opportunity to do that. They're not saying your son is going to become a superstar. And honestly, you can look at your son and daughter and realize they're not meant to be sportsmen. But that hour is so important in them because they could otherwise be then spending that hour in front of a tablet or in front of a phone. So, I think you would see that it probably be more valuable for your kids to be using that hour or spending that hour.
So you're telling me one is a health argument, my kids are going to be healthy.
Yeah.
And second, if they play, they'll probably do better in academics because they are more focused.
Yeah, they'll learn focus, or they need to switch off at some time, right? I think, the more healthier you are, the better you're going to be study, and it'll keep you off some of the devices that we see kids playing today. So those are the only two I could think of.
That's useful. I'm partly convinced. If any of you have questions that some parents have asked you that you've not been able to handle, let's throw them at him and see what happens, right? Ma'am, to you.
Yeah, I would really ask you a question. Saumil, why do you send your child to school for academics alone, or do you want to send your child to develop as a well-rounded person so that he does well in life?
That's a great question, and let me answer what I got an answer from a parent. The question that I got was, fine, you're Rahul Dravid, you're saying it, fantastic. You yourself as a professional have done well, fantastic. My worry is the risk that I as a parent am taking my child's notion of balance. That I know that if the child does well in academics, I know that they will get a good job.
Yeah, but I want to tell you as a parent.
Let me finish. I think it's very important. My worry as a parent is 15 years later, my child is going to look at me and say, hey, buddy, what were you doing? I was a child who wanted to play cricket because Rahul Dravid came to my school. But you were the parent. You should have told me, study. Why did you not tell me to do the right thing? Why did you let me play? So the notion of risk is something that we are not addressing. We are all coming from the religion of sport, we are all coming from the religion of sport, and we're thinking that everybody is waiting to get converted to religion of sport. But there's a risk in between. Especially as a parent, it's my choice. If I support or don't support, my child will be on a path. What is the less risk path?
Well, as an academic to a parent, I will say you're very, very old-fashioned. Because there are many professions in sports that have opened up, that are being explored, and that is what will, if that is going to give joy to your child, you should encourage it. Okay, I have in my organization, because I deal with slum children, the pressure on us is even more.
Yes.
Because the parents want their children to whatever they do. They are not interested in academics. They just want their children to earn better than them. And we are having to fight that. And the way we do that is actually throw open the canvas of all the job opportunities that are available to a child who is interested in sports. Sports management, sports coaching, sports commentary. These are new age job opportunities that we need to explore. I have 35 of my students who are now football coaches, have started football academies, and are actually working as professional footballers. So these parents had never ever dreamt of that before. So that is what we need to tell the parents, that at the end...
Let's stay with that. I think this is a very important point. Sports as a career, the justification for sports playing is a very weak wicket. I mean, use cricket analogy. One, it's a very small population. It's a very small number of jobs available. Whereas if my child becomes an engineer, he clears JEE, he becomes a doctor, he becomes whatever else, there are so many more jobs available. To earn a good living as a cricketer, I have to be Rahul Dravid. I can't be a mediocre gully cricketer, but I can be a mediocre engineer and still make a good living.
But you will get retrenched very quickly.
I can read things.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That mediocrity doesn't stand
By
anywhere.
the way, I'm working 70 hours a week nowadays, okay? Or 90 somebody telling me to.
No, so I'm just trying to understand the notion of risk, right? So when parents say, oh, it's a risk, I'm trying to really understand whether actually playing sport for an hour every evening. So like obviously to become a professional sportsman, you need to play 4 hours a day, right? You need to play at some stage when you reach 10th, 11th, 12th rank, you'll have to play 3-4 hours a day minimum. But playing an hour a day, is it that risky? I mean, that's I think the point that we need to, and maybe people like you can then do the level of research to get to the point to find out whether even all of these guys here who, I mean, like, I don't know, I mean, even if you think about guys like Sundar Pichai and Satya Nadella and stuff, if you go back and I've read stuff about them and a lot of their memories are about playing sport in wherever they were growing up in Hyderabad and stuff like that. So is it really a risk? I mean, I think that hour of sport, yeah, I agree. If a parent comes to me and says, like I encourage all the cricketers who play to not give up studies and to continue playing the sport.
Fantastic.
Because I understand the risk with trying to become a professional sportsman, and I get your point that it's such a narrow pyramid to be a professional sportsman in any sport that to say that this is what I'm putting all my eggs in that basket is highly risky. I would not do that with my own children, and I think I would not encourage anyone. There are a lot of people who do that, and the choice is purely theirs, right? And I'm not comfortable with the choices they make, but it is a high risk. But asking, in fact, asking your children or convincing parents that an hour and a half of sport a day, is it really that risky? I'm not really convinced it's actually that risky. Maybe it's a fallacy. Maybe it's a fallacy that parents have. Maybe no one has been able to prove to them that, actually it's not as risky as you think it is. Actually, it might be better because and it's probably better for your kid.
No, that's a good reminder. I think first of all, sports has this 0-1 notion that either you're playing sports and not doing academics at all, right? Or you're only doing academics and not doing sports at all. This notion of balance and the sports and academics is something that is not celebrated enough. I tell you my personal story, and it's a slightly humbling one for myself, but it might sound a bit. I got selected for the Maharashtra badminton team. I grew up in Mumbai. And after 8th standard, I realized I was not good enough to compete well, and Padukone sir was the only person there, and I realized there's nothing much that I can do as well. I went on the academic side, I got into IIT Bombay. I thought I was a cool dude, Rahul, thinking that I am the only guy who has played state national level badminton and got to IIT Bombay. I could not get into the IIT Bombay badminton team. There were 8 other people who were better than me in badminton. And you know what was worse? The JEE ranks were better than mine. So it was a reminder now, it's back many years ago, 93, 89 when I got into IIT, that it is possible to balance. And now IIT Madras has started this new thing where they are giving 5 scholarships every year for kids who cleared JEE, and if you played nationals, you straight away get into IIT Madras. So I think this important point that the notion of sports and academics as a balance is maybe one important thing that needs to be celebrated.
Jeez, thank God that wasn't there during my time. My parents would have been saying, Bose, right? We'll try that one.
There has been a Harvard study that says very clearly that playing sports 1 hour a day will increase concentration, will increase problem-solving skills. So there's enough study. There's also a University of Illinois did a study and actually mapped students that were playing 1 hour of sports every day against children that weren't, and they found that the children that were actually playing were doing better in academics because they were more focused and they had better goal setting for themselves. So I think there's a great deal of argument to this side as well.
Wonderful.
I think the distinction, we've drawn it out very well. It's a distinction between trying to make someone a professional sportsman and just play. And I think that distinction needs to be kind of drawn. And I think that's, I think that's the important one, really.
I think that's maybe the crux of the issue, and I think we got a good message and a great messenger for that. I want to come to you, ma'am. You work with kids out of very difficult backgrounds, and maybe parents, like you pointed out, have more demands than maybe other, better privileged parents have. So how do you respond to these questions? I mean, I feel like the parents whose risk maybe profiles are steeper. What kind of questions do you get and how do you convince them? Because I know your program is fantastic in terms of science, has got book reading, USSR. By the way, they have something called a yellow room, where like a sports yellow card, if you misbehave, you get a yellow card and you go to a yellow room and you kind of get time to introspect. And is that correct?
Yes, absolutely correct.
I mean, that's an interesting way of integrating
I'm so
sports.
glad that you follow that. Yeah. Our children that are disruptive and have disciplinary issues, we obviously, they are so used to being beaten, violence in their houses. We don't follow that in school. So we put them into the yellow room, where they get a yellow card, which they feel terrible about, but they go and they do reflection on why they got the card. And we encourage writing skills because they do put their reflection in writing and come back to us, and it's really worked very well. Yeah. You asked me this question. Thank you so much. You asked me this question, how do I deal with the parents? I think wherever the parents may come from, whatever their social status and economic status, all parents want their children to be happy. And what should schools want is to create good memories, right? You talked about memories, Rahul. We're talking about memories. So when we are able to convince, of course, the first 3 months is a little bit of a dicey time when they are testing us out. But when they get to see that their children are really happy coming to school, they just leave it to us. And that is our time to get our formula in place. And so that's why we give a lot of importance to sports, because we feel that these children definitely need to let go of their energy. They need to play. And playing is so important. I mean, in countries like Finland, they have little short play breaks after 2-3 periods. They don't wait for a PE period. And Finland, all of us know in this room that Finland's academic scores are one of the best in the world. And the little play breaks have not come in the way. So the challenge we have is we are not able to rationally explain everything to the parents, but the opportunity we have is they leave it to us and trust us.
This is fascinating, and I think this notion of parents can be convinced. One is health, one is sports and education, one is maybe 1 hour, not necessarily a career. And this notion, and the fact that you can convince parents from very difficult backgrounds. The only reminder I want to say that the kids of schools like here, those kids are going through very different kinds of difficulties. Mental health issues are serious issues, there are cyberbullying issues, there are all kinds of stuff happening in the kids' lives. And in that context, these school leaders try to teach them maths and science. Right? And I keep saluting these people because I don't know how they do it. My mother was a head teacher in a municipal school in Mumbai, and as a boy I never appreciated what she did. But after spending time with the schools, I suddenly went back and said, a lot of respect for the work you do. Let me open it to questions. Anybody who has a question for the panel, as a parent or as a school leader, on how we can get more kids to play, maybe some stuff that's coming your way.
Hello sir, good evening. This is Peter from Tamil Nadu, and I'm from the Unique Academy. I have a question for you. As an educator now, I have a student, but he's well and good in cricket. He has played under 19 and he has played under 17. And he's more focused on that. As a teacher or as an educator, I'm very fond that the student is keep growing. But the only one thing, he did not get selected in under 17, and even he did not get selected in under 19. The ages have been keep going up. But the child one day, I think on the under 19 match, when he was playing, he came out with 0. And he threw the bat in the ground. And he came out arrogantly. And the child has been keep thinking that I wanted to anyhow win. But the age has gone. His education has gone. Now how, as an educator, I can bring him back?
googling out.
No, so I kind of trying to understand what you're saying. So the boy has played a certain level of cricket and
Yes.
he gave up, or he wasn't studying well enough
Yes.
because of that.
He's not made it in cricket.
Oh, and he's not really made it in cricket
Yes.
now. Okay. Yeah, so I think that's I never think that it's ever too late to learn. You know, I think if the kid must be 19 and 20 or, whatever he is, you can always, to some level, go back to studying. And studying is not, in my opinion, studying is not only about a degree or it's not only about those marks. It's like, finding an ability to be able to read, to be able to develop other skills is something that, maybe you can encourage the kid to do. But I think this is a really good lesson as to why I think children, need to have that balance of studies and sport in their life up to a certain age at least. Because I think it also makes it easier on a sports field. If you know that you have a backup plan, it puts less pressure on you even when you're playing the game. If you know at least, okay, hey, even if I don't make it in cricket, a lot of that frustration that you were talking about might have come from the fact that he's so frustrated that he's now given up his studies to be able to try and do this. And this is not working out as well, which can happen, right? Sport is not a quid pro quo game. I mean, sport is not about, I put in the most effort, I get the result. There are too many elements involved in sport. I can honestly say I worked really hard, so I'm not just trying to be humble for the sake of being humble. I worked really hard and I was very dedicated, very devoted and very disciplined, and I was all of that. But I know people who were more than me and did much more than me, but could not make it. Because it's not a zero, it's not just a simple maths 2 plus 2 is equal to 4. Sport has too many variables, there's an element of luck, there's an element of just natural gifts that you're given, which you cannot actually explain why you got those gifts. So all of those elements are there in sport. It's not just as simple as that. So which is why I think, when you get kids who are talented in a particular sport, telling them to just keep ticking off their studies is something that actually I think helps them in their sport as well. Because then they don't feel that level of pressure. There's already pressure in playing a sport. And if you go out there with this added pressure that I have to make it, I think that can be really tough on not everyone can handle it. And that can get really, really hard. So I think that's something I always tell parents, right? Or even young kids, is that you just keep your studies ticking over up to a certain point at least, till you are confident that this is potentially can be a profession for you, and then of course it's a challenging thing, because I'll be honest with you, trying to be excellent at sport requires a lot of time, dedication, devotion, and sacrifice. And to be excellent in studies requires the same things. So to be brilliant at both, maybe only Saumil managed it, and 8 of his other colleagues at the IIT. But to be a state level player and get into IIT, I mean that's incredible. So, but I think that's harder and harder. I think that it's getting tougher and tougher. But certainly to be able to manage, no one's asking you to be 90% in studies, right? You could still be a 50, and that's where schools and sports, I think schools today are so encouraging, saying that, okay, we don't expect our sportsmen to get 90% all the time, but even they should keep taking it over 50, 60% whenever you come in, takes your mind off the pressures of sport. So things like that, at least till you're in 12th standard, I think it's really, really important that, kids do that.
But specifically, if it helps you, there are vocational courses now. We're happy to connect you with folks there. Meant exactly for kids who follow the excellence path and then don't make it, and therefore other career opportunities within sports or outside sports also. Okay, sure. Anand.
My name is Ram Mohan. I'm a sports enthusiast, and I'm also a consultant working with sports technology companies. I thank you first of all for all the insights. It's been very great listening to you. And Rahul, you're a legend, of course, rightfully so. My question was about a point that Ma'am Bose actually brought out. I'm familiar with how sports is run in the Scandinavian countries, and they have a concept that they do not compete until the age of 14. And before the age of 14, their attempt is really to expose the children to multiple sports, right? And I think that is a very, very apt way to do things, because in India I have seen the pressure, parents are willing to take the children to sport, but the expectation is too high. You know, they don't get the chance to actually enjoy it, and you know, they pull out from the sport too early. So I would love to hear your views on, you know, this concept of not competing and you know, allowing children to enjoy the sport first.
Just play. Okay. You know, in our schools, we do not believe in competition. It is trying to be better than yourself. Now, that seems a little esoteric and bit cliched, but to put it in action, we've been able to crack it in our schools. But sports is one area where there has to be competition. You have to win, right? But what we do teach our children is not to look at the other participant, but only concentrate on oneself. The Jawahar and Navodaya schools are one classic schools system where they've managed to get the balance pretty well. And if you all study the Navodaya schools, you will know that their students are as good in sports as they are in academics. And then the child decides whether they want to continue with professional sports or academics. But they have the academic background. But I think, whether you like it or not, I think it's very difficult to have non-competitive sports. Sports is something competitive.
Yeah, I just trying to, like I was thinking about this as you were asking this question, and I love this, and I think this is an incredible, difficult challenge for the educators here and people here. You know, our schools, like, I don't know what the school size of those schools in Finland or Norway is, right? You have 20 kids in a class, maybe 10 in a class. And here you've got, you know, and only 15 can make the school team. So there's straight away you can't, without, you have competition. We have a competition for space, right? We want a class of 50 that goes to a PT period. And of course, I think everyone here wants all of their children to participate. But how do you get 50 kids to participate in a 45 minutes or a 1 hour program?
That's what we do.
Yeah, so I mean, I think that's, so it was an interesting thing actually. There was a friend of mine, a colleague, you know, he's a bit involved in cricket, and is an old sort of PE teacher and done some PE. And he had come to Bangalore, brought a group of PhD students, and I was sort of talking to him about things. And he'd gone around to a few schools, and you know, he was telling me this thing of, you know, how kids need to participate more, and there's kids. And the first thing I told him, I said, you know, hey, it's easy for you to talk. Yeah? You come from, you know, wherever, Queensland or something like that. There are hardly any kids in the class. How is the PE guy going to manage 50 kids and ensure that all of them seem to have a good time? And you know, how are they going? Somebody is going to be left out who's not really athletic, and those are the ones we are actually targeting. I mean, this whole conversation is almost leading towards the fact, how do we target the kids who are not going to make professional sport, right? Because the ones who are going to make professional sport will find a way outside of it. And he told me a simple thing which actually just like made sense. He said, I went to one of these schools, the PT period, and you're right, there were 40 kids, and there was one football, right? What if the school was able to put 10 footballs in? Just the same thing, you have 10 footballs. You suddenly see that there are 4 footballs, there's a ball for 4 kids or 5 kids, or yeah, I'm using an example. And suddenly you have the boys or girls kicking the ball more, right? And they're just hitting it more. So they walked out of those 40 minutes doing something. If you put one football, obviously the kid will get one kick in 40 minutes. He's not going to want to do it, and then the next class you'll see the kids standing at the side, sitting there and having a gupshup among themselves and saying, oh God, another PE period. But I thought it was such a simple thing, right? Instead of one ball, nothing else, you just put 10 balls in. And suddenly you'll see different games happening. They'll be playing small games, they'll be playing, somebody's playing head, somebody's playing something else. And I think there are creative things like that people need to come up with to ensure that we engage.
And yeah, it's a good reminder. I think it just, you also depend on the culture that you develop in the school. Culture of sharing and compassion. I've had cases where, Rahul, one kid who came to me and said, can you tell my coach to take that boy into the team? I'll step out because he's terribly upset about not being included. That's the culture of compassion. If you create that culture of compassion, you somehow create the balance.
I wish I was in your school, ma'am.
Yeah, I wish you were. No, but it's true. It can happen.
But on that point, just to build, one is there is this notion of a leaky bucket, Rahul, that kids are coming into sport and they are coming out of sport. Partly because of pressure, partly also because early specialization. It's not just about, not competing. It's about too early specialization. And when they're specializing too early, they're switching off or they're getting injured. So I think there's an important reminder of what you just said of how do you pay attention to what's happening inside the 45-minute PE class when 45 kids are out there and you have one PE teacher. How can I make this experience better? So this experience is like the silicon of the sports, right? If the kids are not playing and not enjoying, who are the future Rahul Dravid? They're going to come out if the kids stop playing. They're going to go towards gaming. They're going to go towards esports. Who's going to play? Who's going to watch? Who's going to buy? I think this class is almost like the silicon of that.
Yeah, and as kids get older, unless you can engage them, right, they're not going to do it. Yeah, you can force a 5th standard, 6th standard, 7th standard boy or girl to do it. By the time the girl gets to 11th standard or 12th standard, if she is or he is not, if you've not made that 45 minutes interesting, they are going to be standing at the side. I'm sure schools don't allow them to have computers or their cell phones with them, but they'll be hanging around in a group, having a chit chat and saying 45 minutes of just chit chatting around, and then the health is not healthy. So at least I think that for me is a unique challenge, and that's what people like you, I think, need to answer those questions in conjunction with people like that. And which is why, for me, when I partnered with Plato, to be very honest with you, and Ravi and his team came and spoke to me, one of the things that really excited me about that was this, that, having a shoe that you can use in school that allows you to just play, right? So you're just playing while, even if it's a black shoe, right? You're able to play, it's comfortable, you're able to run around. Like, I remember the old days, it was so difficult to play in the shoes you had in school, right? We still managed it, but it was tough with those leather shoes. But today, I think, having shoes like this allows you to be able to play in that PT period, to run in between classes, to, I think so. That's what really excited me about this
I think the shoe, Plato's vision for enabling play by doing something very simple to make a shoe that's comfortable to play is brilliant. You talked about girls. We'll come back to girls in a minute, but we have another question.
I have a question.
Yeah, hi.
You just have to press the button.
Yeah. Hi. Thanks so much for this opportunity. Great fan, Rahul. I'm Anant. I'm here as a parent, and it's related to the previous question, right? But increasingly, I see that the free play versus managed play, right? The free play is really going down. When we were kids, we used to just be thrown a football and we used to be sent to the ground and asked to play in schools, right? These days, I don't see that happening. I always see there is a sports sir coming along or a PT master coming along, guiding and managing how the kids play. If I go to the public grounds also, if I go to Parikrma ground, which is near my house, the basketball court is occupied by a coaching class, the skating rink is occupied by a coaching class. So it's all managed. There's no opportunity for kids to play freely. So the question is really, I guess to both the educators and to Shukla ma'am as well as to Rahul, in terms of, how important is it to have this opportunity to play freely when the kids can do what they want, play what they want, rather than being told what to play, when it becomes almost like another class in the school, right?
I think that's a really good question, and I would love to actually give the answer saying, we should create places for unstructured sport, and we should, people should play unstructured sport. But I think, when I think back on just my childhood, right, and I think the reason why I was able to play unstructured sport, because there were so many opportunities and avenues to play unstructured sport. The city wasn't as populated. There were just places to do that. Unfortunately, our kids today don't have that. And I think it's unrealistic to almost say that we should play unstructured sport. I think as parents, we would not risk our children going and playing on the roads today, right? Just the traffic and the amount of vehicles. And, I think there's so many factors, right? That's real risk for me, right? So I think it's almost like, while it saddens me, and I agree with you, that level of unstructured sport is not there anymore. I think we have to be realistic about it, and maybe the way to do it is honestly to try and create that in the structures that we have. In the structures that we have, giving time for people to play unstructured sport. It's not an ideal scenario, and I agree with you, but I think, you know, we have to move with the times. We have to find solutions in the situations we find ourselves in. You know, I think that for me is really important. It's my turn.
I'd like to, what you said is absolutely correct, and your response was very pertinent. Our kids come from, you know, the slums. They're shacks, 100 square feet place, 5 people staying in 100 square feet rooms. And our schools don't have a playground. We have to take our children walking to play, but we still do because we want to cater to their enthusiasm. I'm very fortunate that somebody has donated some land very far away, and we're creating a campus called Parikrma Oxygen, because we really need to breathe oxygen, and that is where we're going to have unstructured sports. And I think that's an experiment that we'll be doing, because we don't want to have a cricket pitch, or, you know, we'll have a little bit of a football ground because our kids are very passionate about football, but we're not going to have any other structured sport, because it is very important. And, you know, other schools, some privileged schools, you can create spaces in your schools for unstructured sports, but it's very difficult for mainstream schools to have free spaces, because you all will build classrooms, because that will bring more revenue. You all need to have.
They are the good guys.
I'm sorry?
They are the good people, right?
Yeah. But you know, it is, we're always building up, and that's what's happening to our city, right? There is no free space which is not structured. So it's important for schools to identify little spots where children just play.
You know, I just want to add 30 seconds on what you just said. I think it's a combination of structure and unstructured is important. If it's completely unstructured, then the good kids play all the time, and the rest of the 9500 kids don't get a chance to play at all. If it's completely structured, then what you said happens. I think it's the balance that is important, not this or that. And if you think from a child's perspective, the child's school time is fully structured. In the school, the child can't do anything unstructured. And that's education. So that all kids are covered. With structure, you make the best use of limited space. Without structure, I can't make the best use of limited space. Therefore, after school should have been unstructured for sports. Unfortunately, what's happened is, because of lack of space, after school has become structured by academies. In school should have been structured, and after school should have been free. It's become the other way around. In PE we are free, after school is structured. Actually we need to flip it, so that they learn the right fitness and skill in school, and they go out and play for life. And when these kids grow up, they'll demand a house with a playground. They'll not agree to work in a city which doesn't have play spaces. And that's how we'll have change. That's
We have just one last question that we have time for. Saumil?
Yeah, good evening. My name is Priya, and I'm a principal of a school here. Wonderful to meet you, Dravid, my favorite sportsman ever. And lovely to hear you, Ms. Bose. It's great to hear you. So my question is regarding the policies that surround sports especially. Why I'm bringing this context is I played sports throughout my schooling life and had to drop it at college, like exactly. As you mentioned, the crossroads between academics and things. So if you are doing well in academics and this thing, you rarely get a chance to balance both, and you have to choose one of it. Having said that, if we have stronger policies at the school level and the college level to give that external motivation to students to continue with sports over a longer period of time. So that I don't think there could be policymakers in this room who could be doing it. I'll give you an example where you say that there is a seat quota available for students who are in college. But that quota is available for a student who has played at state level multiple times. The chances that someone makes to the state level itself is so rare considering the schools. Big schools, small schools, either ways. So ours is a big sector school, so all the more difficult for us to just motivate that kind of team to get them to play at that level. So what can be done in terms of policy to ensure that students stay with sports not necessarily for building a career in sports. Continue even playing sports, as a major part of their life.
Two of them answer the policy one a little better and I'll maybe feed off that a bit. They're probably more into the policy than I am.
Well left outside the hostel.
It's just a fact.
Let me get started. I was part of the expert committee for the National Sports Education Board that was attempted during COVID time. Vineet Joshi was the former chairperson of CBSE, was chairing that. And we did some research with Deepti and other Go Sports and so on. And we found that the single largest issue, we interviewed around 1,000 odd athletes, was the issue of flexibility. That student athletes need flexibility on attendance, flexibility on exam time, flexibility on what marks and so on. And that some boards were able to manage and some boards were not. There was a discussion about a separate board for it. But fundamentally it was flexibility. So in my mind, honestly, it's not a policy issue as much as it's a school and parent negotiation issue. St. Joseph did this. St. Joseph has a roster of fantastic athletes before any policy. Right? Some principals, some parents, some PE teachers, some coach figured out a way to balance sports and academics. So sometimes I feel it's not a policy question as much as but there is work happening. The NEP, for example, as all of you know better than I do, does talk about play-based learning, but that's more play from education point of view, not sport and as a policy point of view. There are more Khelo India schemes happening, there are more Fit India certificates happening for schools. A bunch of stuff around sport that's coming out from a policy point of view. Happy to share more.
In our country, most of our policies get so politicized that it never sees the light of day. But it is really up to the school administration to find a way of letting the child who's interested in sports and is missing classes, attending the taluk meets, and to have an opportunity to make up what they have missed. And that requires great amount of extra work for the teachers as well as a different administrative system. But let's not wait for policies.
Let's not wait for policies.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't have answered that better than
Let's not wait for policies.
It's just, but what I will say, I think I'll just take up on the point Mrs. Bose just said just now. I think, to make a lot of sportsmen successful, I mean, there's a hand, of course, there's the PT teacher, there's the sports coach who gets the recognition, but the hand of the principals and the teachers and your chemistry teacher who's willing to wait an extra hour for you, give her write another exam in day when he or she doesn't need to, is invaluable. I mean, these are the kind of contributions that, schools, people have to go above and beyond, honestly, to drive sport. Lots of people need to go above and beyond. This is, it takes a village to raise a child, right?